right, good morning. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. Today is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is currently 8:10 a.m. And we will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Kate Jensen, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Nate Bryson, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Rachel, Superintendent.
Okay, is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene study session.
All right, we are now in study session. I'm going to turn the time over to Derek Anderson, our Business Administrator, to talk about our Shoreline Middle School's bid.
So what you have in front of you is the Shoreline Middle School bid. This is the bid package for the full construction of the middle school. The bid came in, originally it's like $68 million, but we were able to value engineer it down to 65.6. So we were able to get some savings in there. But so what you've got in front of you is for the shoreline construction that includes everything. So.
And this includes soft costs as well.
This does not include soft costs. This is just everything for the actual construction.
So then what's this number 12 line for that is furnishings?
Cheapest furnishings.
So this is going to be, so there's always furnishings that the construction does, and then there's furnishings that we provide. The furnishings that we provide are all things that are movable. The things that they will provide are things
like
that are
the coat rack,
fixed and built into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What do we expect for soft costs?
My guess is for soft costs on this is going to be about $4 million between the architect fees and then all of the other things to get the school ready.
So we're looking at close to 70, right? And we bonded for 71.
So we are just under about $2 million under what we originally bonded for.
Cross your fingers on inflation.
I was just going to say, how do you foresee things changing?
Yes. Right.
I mean, everything else has, so I assume the answer is yes, and that makes a lot of sense. But.
So right now it's a really weird spot. We're seeing price escalations in some things, but we're also hearing of price corrections and contractions in other things. So it's just really weird what's going on now. It's tough to know and say there won't be any more price escalations, but our contractor is getting to the point where they're starting to think we may be able to get through it without having drastic escalations.
I assume they've tried to estimate some of that
in
for their bid, yeah.
All right. Any other questions about the shoreline bid? All right, next, Wasatch retaining wall bid.
So this is the Wasatch retaining wall bid, what you have attached, and this is the first bid there's going to be, I believe, 3 bids that will come forward. So this is the first section. It's just site prep in the wall. This will be included in the overall cost estimate that we go for in the next one that it gets approved. But this one is for the wall and the dirt, and then the next one will come in about October or November is the next bid package that's ready will be due to come. But this does include all the site work and site prep and then the walls. So.
Does this also include the canal issue?
So this does include the canal issue, that is correct.
What did we decide in the end with the canal?
So what was that?
We're just gonna
so,
stick it.
okay. Well, so here's what's come of the canal is that we ended up having an alternate bid as part of this to go to them and show this is how much this is going to cost. As you're all aware, the original cost was $600,000 estimate. Sitting down with the canal company and saying what specifically has to be in this to service this, we put that in the bid package. The bid package came back as the alternate to put in that line, $40,000. So we just said let's just put it in and be done with it and make just
And who's required for the maintenance of that line?
They will be required to maintain it.
They will?
Yeah.
The canal company or
The Santiago's.
Okay.
So it's a horizontal line. It would be considered because it'll horizontal from there and then end at, essentially and dump into the storm drain from ours to the city. So the Santiago's would be required to maintain the horizontal line.
So we just give them an easement if they're responsible.
And the route that the plan is to go down right now is along the road, and so there already is an easement. It's not
Okay.
going to run across the property.
So, all the way through the negotiation of the sale, the number we used was 9, so 7. So pure work and retaining
Yes.
was 9, so this seems like a good thing.
Yes.
Oh, you're saying this is coming in under what we originally thought?
Yeah.
Okay.
When we were negotiating the sale, and we were saying, this is what this is gonna cost.
But we did, I mean, we saw a big spread on the bids. There was another bid that came in, it was over $1 million more than this one, the one. But, so it's just, we're starting to get to that point of wide spreads of bids, and it's because you have some that are running out of work to do, and they're starting to get hungry, and they're bidding more aggressively, and the others that have a huge backlog of work, which is what they're used to, and so they
didn't need the job.
They didn't need the job as much, and they bid at higher prices. So.
And just, I already asked this to Derek, but this is part of the $35 million.
That's correct.
Any other questions about the Wasatch retaining wall? All right, next. Library books policy. I'm going to turn the time over to Anne Marie Harrison, our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
How long do we have?
20 after.
Okay. So.
So you got 12 seconds.
You got 4 minutes.
I think we'll talk more about this at board retreat coming up. As you know, the state of Utah adopted, or rather legislated, new law about ensuring we don't have, there are many names for it, sensitive materials is kind of the broad term, pornographic, harmful to minors, or displays of sexual activity. So each district needs to form a policy around that. I believe that I submitted 2 draft policies. The State Board of Education released one quite recently, a couple of weeks ago. Prior to that, the Utah School Boards Association lawyer, I believe his name is Patrick Tanner, also released one. I showed you both of those. I created a policy. I'll just quickly tell you, the draft policy there is based on the Utah School Boards Association one. And a couple of reasons for that: it felt tighter to the law to me. The state school boards was enhanced a degree more from the law. And that's the primary reason. So today I'm coming to you to ask you to think about a couple of things. One, would you like to stick with this policy language that we have that comes from the Utah School Boards Association model policy, or would you like me to draft it closer to the Utah State USBE's model policy? Or, in talking last week with Patrick Tanner, the attorney, I asked him some questions because both of these policies, to be frank, are going to overwhelm the school. Both of the policies are written that the school site, the principal creates a team for every challenged book. Every person, and the people that can do this are students, employees at the school, or parents of children at the school, can, up to, with 3 books per year, can bring those books up to challenge. And then as both of these policies have written, there's a school committee with the principal. Various models describe how many parents, how many teachers need to be on it. But you can only imagine what could happen to a school, that there's a timeline that they have to respond to that. So I asked Mr. Tanner to explain how much of that was required in the law. For instance, I anticipate this will be used more in our secondary schools, given that we have 2 at each level, traditional schools. To me, it doesn't make sense to say, oh, Centennial decided to take this book off of their shelves and do nothing with Dixon when it might come up. So I said, could this be a district process that certainly involves people from that community, but would take a lot of the tracking and
It lightens the
minutia.
burden. It really lightens the burden.
The
on
management and the
individual
process.
school.
Yeah.
So if it comes out of one elementary school, it's gonna come out of all the elementary schools?
If
or-
it comes out of that elementary school, we would include people from that school, but others as well, and then make a decision based for the district on that book, rather than wait for 13 challenges. And again, if it happened in a middle school, someone at the district would be in charge of, and we'd probably just have a committee with reps from both schools that each month would meet to review. Everyone on that committee has to read the book in its entirety. That's a way that I could work to pay people on that committee for their time in reading the books, because I think that's going to happen, whereas the school doesn't quite have that capacity. I'd work with like the PTA or parent arm to find parent representatives for those. I just think it would be easier for the schools. However, his message was, yeah, I don't see anything saying you couldn't turn this into a district process. The law just really specifically outlines what is determined to be sensitive materials, and it's got some pretty critical measures in there. I think you'll know there are 3 statutes that apply to sensitive materials, and each of those we have to ask the same questions, even if we find that it has, and I can show you the detail if you want it, we still have to say, is it of no serious value to the scientific literature or whatnot field? Is it, and kind of consider as a whole. So having to train every principal to do this, I'm concerned for their ability and help in trying to manage this year. So any way you would like to submit feedback on that to me, and it may take some talking and looking, I understand that, and then I believe we'll talk about it later. Any questions before I sit down?
I have some.
Sure.
Do we already have a library book policy?
No, we have some guidelines that we've been using, but it has not been put into policy. We have a curriculum policy, and it mirrors our guidelines that we use for libraries in both how we get the books and how someone could challenge them for removal.
And this review process is going to be on top of all the duties. So are we going to compensate the librarians and everybody else for their work?
That's one of my reasons for trying to make it a district thing, because schools wouldn't even know how to budget for this, because they could have
They could
3
have
books
0
challenged in a year or 0. So yes, I think we are going to have to compensate many of those personnel.
Because some of the
Teachers.
librarians are only part-time and
Correct. Yeah. No, I think we are going to have to do that.
I know we'll keep talking about it, but I would like to see a little bit more in the policy about the original selection. Like,
Okay.
there are some details here, but maybe a little more specifically, how do we select in the first place, so then in the end we won't have to deselect.
I was gonna ask the same question.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that Canyons case, they had, like, what was it, 2 of the books, they were challenged for pedophilia, and, like, that wasn't really in this, like, that dynamic. So I don't know if that's something we add, or are we just going with the...
I think that I could, if there was an instance of pedophilia, I think I could find under one of those 3 statutes.
You
where
would squeeze it in?
I don't even think you have to squeeze
Okay.
any sort of mention of that, I think. And I'll look at that specifically. I'll read those 3. I'm not worried that that wouldn't fit into one of those.
I have another question. So, is the on line 224, it said the sole purpose of the district library materials review committee to determine whether the items contain indecent material. What about other things besides that, like discrimination or other purposes? Should this policy just be about that, or should it include other things?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and it's up to each board. I guess my sense is at this point, everyone in the state is expecting legal challenges to this from both sides. Everyone's on the edge, and it'll probably hit the bigger districts first. So I guess my sense is I'd rather stay closest to the law on this right now and see what litigation brings, because I don't think this is going to be the last iteration of this policy. That's what my colleagues and I are sensing based on lots of things. It's certainly to your discretion to add other factors. The law doesn't necessarily say.
I gotta go.
Sorry. Harmful to minors, you might find something under there that could apply to other things. Harmful to minors.
The advantage of sticking as close as Patrick has outlined to the law is that when in the end, when it comes out on any legal, legislative, policy language, it always ends up cutting both ways, as a lawyer knows. And you might be intending it only to go this way, but it will be used against you on the other side. So sticking as close to what the law requires and not going beyond lets us be, as much as we can within our legislative framework, human, which actually we need to be in our libraries and curriculum. So.
Unless I hear different, I'll intend to come to that next meeting and retreat with a cleanup of this policy, which I think of the model policies is the closest to the law, as well as Patrick said he's happy to review when we write that is district-based and give us feedback on whether that applies to the law. I'll come with both of those drafts.
So
Sorry, I'm going a little
the
bit.
extension has been moved to October 1 to have this approved. We have a board retreat on or whatever we call it now, on the 30th of September. Probably we will add a study session, a business meeting at the end of that to approve this policy.
So that means we need to get our questions and follow up to Anne Marie about that. Before then. Yes.
I'm happy to meet whatever you would like. I'm happy to review. We're working to get that policy to Mr. Chandler.
So every school
week.
district should have one of these in place by October 1st. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to talk about the SHARP surveys. I'm going to turn the time over to Doug Finch, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services.
Thank you. Good to be with you this morning. I sent you the materials. By Keith's request, you should be able to see the survey questions. I mean, it's just as transparent as possible for you in terms of your decision making regarding this. Understand this is something that students only participate when they have received consent of their parents, an opt-in only participation survey. And then again, I think there's a number of things you might have as questions. I tried to anticipate some of those as far as the context of why we're having this discussion, so I provided a little bit of an outline of my notes. You can see there was a memo we received from USBE, from Tanya Albornoz, who's our contact for prevention and student services right now, stating that in the June meeting that USB held as a board, they temporarily withdrew their support for utilizing the SHARP survey moving forward. But they do plan to have a study group, as you can see on, I think it's the 4th bullet here, where they hope to revisit, the 3rd bullet, in October's USB board meeting on October 6th as to whether they will continue to say that we're not fully behind this and it's up to districts, boards of education to decide whether they're going to participate or not. So we don't have the final word from USBE on this, but we do know that they're studying it, right? We certainly have a lot of support from the department who benefits from this, and that is the Department of Health and Human Services from the state office that really are the main supporters behind and beneficiaries from this. I wanted you to also see, besides the idea of what the SHARP survey is, I wanted you to see, try to anticipate your concerns or questions about what does our district benefit from. So that last section, those 4 bullets there, show how we benefit in a myriad of our departments. Everything from determining some prevention programs, curriculums, resources, our nurses, our counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists, all use this information to identify, not individuals again, because we don't get results back by individual, but just trends, right, that are on the minds of kids and concerned. Anyone that's been a member of our communities that care have known that this is an important piece of data that they look at, trying to determine initiatives in the past that we want to focus our energy towards. So those are just some examples. And the last thing, I thought it was important to also see kind of a number associated with what we do in grant writing. A lot of our grants we write in the school district are based on trying to find some baseline data. Some communities like Ogden and others we've worked with in the past, their actual data comes from an effort like United Way and other folks made outside of the school district to kind of gather some needs-based data from their community. We're without a lot of that data currently in Utah County, so this is the primary place where we receive data for the writing of grants. And we estimated that while it's not the only way we get these grants, that somewhere between $1.5 to $2 million annually is what we benefit from in having this data support our grant writing. And I named 5 or 6 or so the grants, for instance, that we benefit from, both state as well as international, or not international, federal grants that we apply for. So I'll pause there, just ask if you have any questions, and see if you want to.
So I just want to ask a question just for the public, so
Yeah.
they're aware. Sharp survey goes to our 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th graders.
Everybody.
2 times a year?
Every other year.
Right, every other year. But do they take it twice a year, at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year?
You just take it once, I believe,
Take it
right?
once.
It's one time in the springtime. The last time we took it was the spring of 2021. So I think that the next opportunity for us to be on that 2-year rotation would be this next spring. Okay. Thank you. Great
So
question.
it's the same kids who are getting it every time. Like my kids are not taking it because they're not in those grades in those years, right?
That's a good point,
so
yeah.
It's the same kids. We're watching those same
Alternates
kids on
every
that
other
trend.
year,
It's a
and
sample.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a sampling, right? And our participation is again by parents opting in, as mentioned. We do try and provide some support to the teacher to feel some sense of urgency about making sure parents are informed. We don't necessarily coerce people or make it so that there's some reward by participating. It should be just fair participation for those who consent to want to do it. But
And
yeah,
how
you're
do-
right.
How do they opt in?
They opt in through like a hard form that's sent home and then returned. Yeah, thank you. Good question.
I feel like
Rebecca?
the question I have is why was the support withdrawn? I feel like it doesn't detail that in your write-up. I know there were certain questions that people were concerned
Right.
about. Can you remind me, please?
Yeah, I think some of the questions that were raised by the USBE Board of Education were just, I think, probably concerns around the unintended impact that possibly is there by asking kids questions about behaviors or attitudes that might be risky or antisocial or so forth. So, for instance, is someone the victim of bullying or violence, or occasionally feels blue or depressed and unable to do their general things maybe that they normally enjoy doing without feelings of like being withdrawn or so forth. So I think that there were members of the State Board of Education who felt like asking those questions sometimes causes an individual to permeate on that idea and maybe think, well, maybe I am depressed. Or maybe I do want to explore more of this, what vaping is like. So I think there was an idea, is it a contagion?
planting and
Is it a
some
trigger?
idea.
Is it possibly
You should
have
never
a...
ask a question.
So some of these questions I'm reading, I'm going, it's like self-incriminating. And
Yeah, yeah, it's like, I don't
Oh,
answer
no.
this.
Is it identifiable to a
The-
student?
No.
It isn't, yeah, so if you use marijuana, I mean, depending on, again, it's personal preference on the board, but you can see what if they go, do you enjoy spending time with your mother? Why is the school asking that? You don't need to ask that. But for social services, I mean, we have a unique district where our school demographics are vastly different from our population demographics, general population demographics. If you remember, from your truth and taxation hearing, how often people say, can't you get grants? Well, first step in getting a grant is collecting data. And so we need, this is, for us, where it's an opt-in, but it's sort of uniquely important to a district like ours or Murray or Ogden.
Yeah. Thanks, McKay, for that additional explanation. And again, anyone else who's got context around it, reading the questions, they're pretty pointed because they want a specific response. And I think I've seen that some of the metrics they do on the backside. If someone is inconsistent or says I never use substance, later in the survey says I use it all the time, they throw out surveys like that. So because again, the idea of fear is that is someone really taking the survey sincerely, and are we
That
getting
was one
data
of my
right?
questions.
And so there's quite a deal that the individuals who actually score or work on the survey results do to sift out the things that are incomplete or inconsistent, or just even a disclosure at the end. There's a question that's on there, I think, that says, were you honest in your
Yeah,
completion?
That's my favorite one.
And if someone answers no there, I mean, again, not that that's 100% barometer, but it's just another level of inconsistencies, incompletes, or someone who discloses at the end, I didn't take this serious. Those are not recorded in the final results that we receive. Jennifer?
Couple questions. So, who compiled this? Is this like different state agencies came together with questions? This is something that could change if enough people
Yeah.
wanted the questions to change?
I think right here on the what is the SHARP survey, the part that talks about it's based on a national needs assessment that was put together. Each state, though, develops its own.
But it's a
right?
so it's
So it's
a
a
state one.
state-driven one by the Department of Health and Human Services. It's been around for about 20 some odd years, and it has adjusted. I just, in my time in working in student services, there has been some inclusion of some questions related to some things around social, emotional, and behavioral health, and also things around alternative lifestyle type things that have been questions. They've been just to see what's on people's minds and their concerns. I think if those, again, who participated in CTC saw data a couple of years ago about saying what on people's minds as it relates to their demographic group, right? And there were some additional questions there that were really insightful to see how people self-identified as their interests, their needs, their, those sorts of things. And so it really just helps you know who are you serving, right? But back to your point, Jennifer, I think these are really malleable. These are things that maybe this process of the review that USBE is taking certainly could give some feedback, because this has from county and state agencies, this has conjured quite a little bit of a response on their part to say, we haven't got the endorsement anymore of our partners in education. That was the main vehicle by which we gathered the data. So a healthy collaboration has begun between the two agencies, I believe.
So just a couple questions.
Yeah.
What is our percentage of kids that opt in?
It's varied, and I'd like to say that it was always based on the parents' refusal as much as it was perhaps a laissez-faire or not a real exerted effort that maybe sometimes some of our administrators or teachers made to make sure the word was getting out that it was an option. So we've done some things to just be a little tighter about making sure that schools get the word and option out to parents, because that wasn't maybe even happening at times as cleanly as we wanted to be. I don't know if I have a data point to give you saying it's 40%, 50%, but I think it's a majority. The last time we looked at it last year, or 2 years ago when we gave this, to the majority of kids whose parents had an opportunity to review and see that, I think more than half opted to participate in the survey.
Okay, and then my other question is just to double check. So there's anonymity to this survey, and it does not follow the student.
No.
So.
Yeah, there's
Can I
nothing
ask
that tags it to the student or their family.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yes.
Are the kids very well instructed on that? Like, do they understand? Because I feel like that's going to promote more honesty if they understand they're not, this is not attached to them in any way.
Yeah, I haven't administered the test myself, but again, I think that's in the way it's written and the format and so forth, is to say this is purely anonymous. This is feedback we want to know about youth like you and what you experienced.
And other state statutes apply, like almost all of the student data privacy statutes are, they're not just protected by, we're saying it's actually against the law in Utah for it to be any other way.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Rebecca? Okay. Again, I don't know that today's the day to make a hard and fast decision. Keith had asked that because this is a current issue that's going on as it relates to our schools, we probably have some time even to wait to even our next retreat or
when do we have to administer it again, in 2023?
Springtime.
Yeah, in the springtime.
This spring.
Yeah, but I think that the deadline is sometime around probably November or so for us to be able to say, do we want to be in the queue for doing this again? So even if you felt like you wanted to kind of watch and see what happens in the October USBE meeting in terms of their what their committee comes back and presents or findings, probably the same types of questions you're posing, and the Board of Education there at the state will give a thorough look as to whether they want to quote-unquote endorse or not. It's used in the schools. But again, as you can see on the original thing, the board withdrawing their support does not mean that schools and districts still can't participate. So
We wanted you to see that there is value to us doing it, but again, this is a local decision, so rather than us just plowing forward without involving you and your awareness, we thought we wanted to bring this to you and have you provide feedback to us along the way.
So are we doing that at another time to provide feedback on what we think?
The follow-up will be probably in the retreat, yes.
yeah. So if you want me to find any more information, you can either contact me directly or just let me know now, and we'll try and watch this issue closely so that we can have an up-to-date conversation on what people are learning. So happy to help you in any way I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Okay, good morning. It is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. We're convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is 8:40 a.m. and we will begin with the roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Kay Jensen, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Nate Bryson, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Charles, Superintendent.
Is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene our business meeting.
All right, we are now in our business meeting. All right, Derek, do you want to talk a little bit about Shoreline Middle School?
Yep, so what you have before you is the bid package for Shoreline. This is the main bid package that has the bulk and pretty much everything for the school. So the total bid came in at $65,637,454.
Okay, is there a motion on this?
This was Westland Construction, right?
Correct.
I move that we approve the bid for construction of Shoreline Middle School as discussed in the study session.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Bryson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Board Member Hales. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. All right, you want to talk about the Wasatch retaining wall bid?
Yep, so what you have before you is bid package 1 for Wasatch. This is the retaining wall and a lot of the dirt work. That bid right now is $7,530,000 for that bid package, along with the alternates 1 and alternates 2 of $473,480 and then the $34,588. And so we're asking the board to approve the bid package plus the alternates.
Okay, is there a motion on this?
I move we approve the site prep and earthwork and retaining wall bids for Wasatch Elementary.
Okay, motion made by Board Member Jensen. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, second made by Board Member Partridge. Is there any further discussion on this motion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
How's the weather changing? Feel it? With all
Yeah,
rainstorms?
I
You haven't been in town enough.
well, I was up in Rock Canyon yesterday. I went, oh, fall's coming.
Feel it in your knee?
That's right.
How was the United Kingdom?